Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining me this week on Newsmakers, where there's been a lot of increasing interest and attention to the importance of mental health. And today we're focusing on services for children, looking at those services and some of the issues in our community. And joining me, we have two representatives, Melissa Moore and Aubrey Doss, and we're talking about Will's Place and some of those services here. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Someone I were to ask you, I think I've heard of Will's Place, but let's explain what we're talking about. I can start off with some basic background.
So Will's Place is part of Ozark Center and part of Freeman Hospital, and we work in conjunction with Freeman Health System. So we are an outpatient behavioral health center that serves youth and families from birth really up to age 25. We have a variety of different services. Really, it's kind of just based on the family needs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. We really take the time to get to know the families and see what services might best fit with them. We have psychiatrists, a number of therapists, and our therapists are fortunately very highly trained in evidence-based practices, which means they've been trained in treatment models that have been tested over time to see results. And so we feel very confident about the practices that we provide. So we do have a specific, I guess, additional training and focus in trauma, but we do see a variety of children and family with several different presenting issues.
So history of how long you've been in operation?
Well, goodness, a few years ago we celebrated our 50th anniversary.
You did?
Yeah, so we have been up in business for quite some time and continue to see the need and I think meet the needs of the community. Of course, several years ago we had some changes and we lost some locations following the tornado. What we've been able to kind of, I think, hear the community and set up locations based on those needs since we lost several. And so Will's Place moved to a different location. So we're currently at 1800 West 30th Street. And the numbers have continued to climb. And so we've tried to accommodate that need.
So as society changes and the needs of the community change.
Yes, and so with that we've grown tremendously.
Now you're talking about dealing specifically with children, but it sounds like a very broad term for children.
Yeah, so the word children I think is misleading because we don't think of adolescents as children anymore. But a huge number of our population is actually adolescents, and then our older youth I feel like is growing as well. We have whole programs just specifically for our older youth.
So that means that you need to be able to tailor to the different age groups their needs.
Yes, exactly. All sorts of modalities we're trained in. So many.
Well, I know I mentioned broadly at the top that there's been an increasing attention paid to mental health. Are you seeing that locally, that more people are saying, hey, we need to work with the people who need assistance?
We do, and I think there's an awareness in our community, and so some of that, I do think has to do with kind of the increase and decrease in stigma where people feel, it's okay. This is part of what happens as we continue to grow, whether it's children, youth, adolescents, that transitional age, and so they feel comfortable. And I think, understanding and talking to other people that say, hey, I've been to Will's Place, we had a positive experience, and my child's doing much better, our family is doing much better. And so people feel confident about those services.
Well, we'll talk a little bit today about those services and things and the need for those services. I guess, some people are watching and they say, well, how do we know if our child is just going through growing pains or if they need to go to someone else to help them out?
Sure.
Some of the first questions someone might have.
So I always like to look at it as like a continuum. So we as parents or even close family friends, we tend to notice changes. And so little changes are typical of adolescence, right? This is like the time developmentally that we're experimenting, we're trying hair, we're trying different personalities, what fits us best. But I always like to think probably when you start to feel concerned, as a parent, there's that gut feeling almost like that this is not like all the other kids. Or maybe they were highly athletic and then now they don't want to do any sports. But not only do they not want to do any other sports, they're not wanting to do much of anything. So maybe they're in their room all the time where they used to be outgoing. Or the opposite, if they used to be really shy and now all of a sudden they're really outgoing and they're making some interesting choices, we'll say, that might just be a good time to get a check and just see. And I always like to say it's always good to just ask.
Yeah.
As a parent or a friend, like, I've noticed these things. Do you feel like that's okay, or what's going on? And that usually gives you a good indicator too.
And I think that piece is very important, that parents feel comfortable to sit down with their child and say, hey, what's going on? You know, we've noticed these changes. And not every child may say, yay, we want to go. But just encouraging them and providing that understanding that, you know, you're not the only one. There's lots of individuals that have these feelings, and, you know, that help is possible and recovery is possible, and just validating and really supporting them in that process can really make a difference.
So it sounds like communication is obviously a key,
Yes.
that you're
Yes.
listening,
Yes.
you're observing.
Right,
You're
right.
supposed to have basics, but we hear so many challenges in society. Perhaps sometimes parents aren't that involved in their children.
Sure.
You know, they're not maybe noticing things because they're not around them as much.
Yeah, sometimes it can be a little difficult, I think, too, just to ask the question. You know, it's just, and what do I do with that information? But you don't have to have all the answers, and that's why those, you know, behavioral health professionals are there to help along the way.
Well, I'm wondering, you know, we hear a lot about the schools involved and concerns as far as we're working with children. Are you doing more with schools today as far, because the teachers probably see it during daytime, the children maybe more than the parents do.
Absolutely. And so we do have a lot of things going on with school districts right now, more than we have ever in the past. And we have partnerships. We've developed formalized partnerships with many of the school districts and have established agreements. We have 2 school-based therapists that are already in the schools, and in a majority of the other local schools we're working on the implementation, kind of start dates for additional therapy services to be provided school-based, which is a great need. I think that there's a lot of research and support about physical and behavioral health is so indicative of academic success and progress. You know, if you have a student that's walking through the door and they're bringing all the home or all the issues with them, it's really hard to expect them to be ready to learn and to not have those things on their mind. So to be able to you know, have those providers on site is really priceless.
So you're able to say, just stay in the building, there's someone here to help you without drive across town to visit.
Yeah, and miss a half day of school or those core classes where now having therapists really integrate with the school district. We can also look at, you know, when are the core classes happening? Let's have them pulled out during non-core classes and get the help they need, and then, you know, be back to class, and you know, parents as well are not having to miss half days of work. It's just, it eliminates a lot of those barriers to treatment.
So does it become kind of a teamwork approach where the teachers may notice something and working with the family and the parents to get the children involved?
Yes, I think so. I think you know, it's kind of a team effort, and the more we can integrate and be on the same page, you know, the better place we'll be. And then if we're, you know, if the school is also supporting behavioral health, then I think families are going to feel more comfortable, and it won't feel quite so intimidating, and knowing, okay, well, I trust the school, this service is on school grounds, and so we would like to try that.
Does that help perhaps for some children to take away the stigma or so forth? That, you know, you're missing school, so you have to go somewhere. But you know,
Right.
we don't know what's going on. From that peer pressure.
And I also think, so I have, through our grant, I have the opportunity to work with youth on a youth council, and they are passionate and they have so much good information, and they want to talk about mental health. Like, they want us to be integrating these things into the classroom, into the school setting. So I think I've told them about the different changes to the Missouri laws and legislature and all of the procedures that encompasses, and they're really excited.
Right. So the younger generation says, yes, we want this.
Yes, they do, very much. They're excited and they're passionate. I wish they could be here because they would just have so much to tell you.
Yes, they
So
would.
is there a generational difference perhaps? Some of, I say the older generation in very broad terms, but some people say, well, you know, mental health is something we don't have to go to a doctor for, you know, sometimes those old thoughts.
Sure. Aubrey works the most with, I would say, those focus groups.
So we went to a national conference, and it was actually talking about this exact issue, and they've done polls, and nationally youth are ready to talk about mental health and why it would like us to just be more open about it, and it's just part of life, and adults are actually the ones that are trying to kind of get in the way because we're not sure of how to deal with it, and like, how do we talk about that in an open way, and what do we tell younger kids, and how do we explain all of these different mental health issues. And so, yeah, I think it was really interesting. I took that away and I was like, oh man, like what am I doing to maybe decrease their willingness to talk?
So the different perspectives you can see.
Yeah,
sure.
It's really exciting.
So we have a lot of situations where, the counselors are obviously professional counselors working with people. Some people probably, that's a big unknown when they say we'd like you to visit, a counselor. How do you explain to a family or a parent that, we'd like your child, or your child's going to come in and visit with you?
Oh, well, it depends on the age. So younger kids, I feel like probably think I'm a lot more fun. Let's just be honest. It's like you got out of school and you get to come play and we talk while we play. For adolescents and families, I typically talk about it more like I am the third party. I don't have any emotional attachment to what you're telling me, to a degree. So I'm not like talking to your mom because I'm not going to cry. And I'm not going to become upset. I'm not going to get you in trouble. Like that's not my role. My role is to help you learn how to cope with the situation, how to handle it in a different way, and I don't have those emotions attached. The same as if you're telling me a trauma, I'm not going to get angry at that person, or I'm not going to get angry at you. I don't have those emotions around it, so I can carry it and help you through it a lot better.
Feels safe.
And it feels safe, and there's no judgment. Whatever you tell me, I'm not going to judge you for it because that's not my role. I just get to be here and help you through it. And usually that feels nice.
They're looking for that kind of response from people.
Right. Right.
It's perhaps a little hesitant as what are they going to think about me? That's
Sure. I think, a new experience can always be a little intimidating, but once they get in there and, again, we have a lot of highly trained professionals, and so they know what they're doing, and they get in, work with the families, and then they start to see those positive results and are more and more encouraged to come back.
Now you mentioned working with the family, so in addition to meeting with the youth, is there a way to get the families involved or report back or visit with them and say, okay, now we're talking about this, how you can help us out, and so forth?
For sure. I find that families are the most valuable asset to every youth. I'm a strong believer, and I have this conversation at the beginning of every therapy, is that you as a parent are always going to know your child better than me.
Absolutely.
I am just a professional. You live with them, you've seen them, you've grown with them, and so your information is valuable to me. And if you don't speak up or you can't tell me things, then it's not working between the two of us. And so it's hugely beneficial to speak with families, because how do I implement things at home? How do I know what's going on? If I'm just relying on one person, we're not always the best reporters on our own mental health, myself included. Sometimes I have to have a good friend or Melissa over here, my boss, tell me like, I've noticed like you're a little off lately, and I'm like, oh yeah. And so I think parents are huge advocates for their children, and they almost have to be involved.
And we do have particular modalities of treatment, one in particular parent-child interaction therapy that is geared more for younger children, and so we have various offices that are set up where we're able to provide therapy in real time, and so we're able to kind of coach the parent and watch some natural interactions between the parent and child, and the therapist is out of the room and able to coach the parent through an earpiece. And so it's really a different perspective and a way to really embrace and see what's happening kind of in the home.
So starting early, you mentioned young ones. Is it important that if you suspect a problem, that you start at a young age to help that child as they're developing through those upcoming years?
I say yes. I love working with youth 12 and under. It's like my passion. I've worked with youth as young as 18 months old, and so it's my dream that every youth would be coming in at 3-4. Because then think about how much change we can make. We could change a whole family dynamic, and that's changing generations to come. And so it just makes me really excited when people come in early and they're like, I don't know, like, is this a problem? I'm like, oh, I can help. Yes, I can help. Yeah. And the earlier you intervene, usually the better the outcomes will be. So if I'm intervening at 45 and they've had all those years of pattern, there's still hope. Still recovery is very possible, but it could be more difficult. Versus if someone's coming in at 10, 11, I can help then. And so maybe it'll be fewer patterns. Recovery and hope is always possible with mental health. I just think that prevention and early intervention is so key. And it also sets you up because you know what to expect. You know, if I'm coming in at 10 and I have depression, throughout my life I know what that looks like. I can plan for that. But if I've waited and I'm not really sure what's going on, and then I go to help, it might be a little bit more difficult. There's more pattern there.
Right.
Yeah. it's kind of similar to a medical condition. You know, we like to believe that early intervention is really contributes to positive outcomes.
So helping them go on through the rest of their life and
Right.
be successful and
Right.
get together. Well, I know you have a lot of different programs. I have some brochures and information, but you also had, I understand, a recent grant to help look at early onset psychosis. So let's talk about that.
We
what that
did.
involves. Yes,
Aubrey
yeah.
is the project coordinator of that grant, so she can.
It's a really, really exciting grant. It is one of the first in the actual U.S. nation for our area to be looking at this age for early onset psychosis, which is like really exciting. I get really kind of passionate about early intervention, but it's looking at kids as young as 9. So how can we look at who is at risk and provide interventions early to help maybe even prevent a first episode of psychosis? And if you can think about that and just imagine, like, someone's life could change.
At
Like,
a young age.
yeah,
Right,
like
right.
completely change, and we could be putting things in place to prevent them ever having a first episode of psychosis. It's like very exciting. It gives me goosebumps when I think about it, because it's like first episode psychosis is so scary.
Now, I know you have some slides,
Yeah.
and as we talk along, we can kind of call some of the
Yeah.
graphics up. But, you know, perhaps, you know, the first question is, what is it? Someone in the audience,
Yeah.
what is psychosis?
Yeah, I think psychosis sometimes sounds really scary. You know, if you hear psychosis, I think we go worst case scenario in our brains, and we think about all of the social media outlets kind of show the worst case scenario, but really psychosis is just like a break in reality. So it might be, you know, you see something that might not be there, you hear something that might not be there. So all of your senses could be involved. But most people, so if it's like a continuum, early intervention or those who are at risk, that's the population our grant is looking at, is looking more at people that may still know that it's not quite right. So I might hear murmurs, but I'm like, oh, wait, but I'm still questioning it, versus someone that is fully in their first episode of psychosis, they're not going to question it. That's just real.
It just becomes part of their life. And
Yeah.
so forth. So as we saw on the slide, you know, the description of what it is, and then some people are wondering maybe, you know, what are the different, there's different phases, I'm sure, like any
Yes.
you mentioned illnesses and so forth.
Sure.
You know, you have the, I guess, the early diagnosis, but then you go through phases in development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, what's really fascinating about psychosis is that the phases can't be identified until after your first episode. So I find that very interesting, because so I can't sit here and say, Melissa, you're in the prodromal stage right now, because she can't have a prodromal stage until she has her first episode.
So it builds upon itself.
It builds upon itself. And really the prodromal phase is just that period I'm talking about. Those like murmurs, hearing things, maybe seeing things, sensing things that aren't quite right, or it's that suspiciousness, but you can't have it because it's a research term. So I think that's really fascinating. I've not really ever ran across that in mental health, which,
It's
you know,
anywhere you
research.
look into. We can see
Yeah.
what is the phase and so forth. Then
Sure.
people are probably wondering, well, who's at risk? You know, what's involved? You know, that's, you know,
Oh, yeah.
I need to look at that's a whole other slide as well. But
Yeah.
that's probably the big
Right.
question is, you know,
Yeah.
when you're looking at research and things.
So in our grant, we're really looking at, well, I should say this. What's really fascinating as well is that no one is really looking at the ages from 9 to 12. So that being said, it's hard to research and look at something where there's no tools.
Nobody has any background.
No one has any
Right,
background.
right.
It's like very little research on it, but we're keeping our eyes open. But for 12 and olders, we use a screener, and it has been researched and proven. And so we look for these youth that come in, and so. Yeah.
So if we have, I think we have a slide that shows, you know, who's at risk. We can look at that information. That
Yeah.
we're looking at.
And we do try to screen all of the youth that are 12 and older that walk through the door. That way people, you know, they may not really understand kind of what's going on with their body, and so we want to make sure that we're asking the questions and that we're able to gather that information and provide that intensive
Right.
kind of intervention if needed.
So we
Yes.
can see some warning signs here
Yeah.
that tie into that.
So yeah, so this is why we ask. So I won't read all of the warning
Right,
signs because
some
that would
good
take
points.
forever. But so some of them sound very similar to most mental health issues in general. Difficulty concentrating, you know, those sort of things. For our grant, I'm really looking at, and what we've looked at as kind of important signs are extreme paranoia and suspiciousness. So if they're pretty paranoid, think people are out to get them, or if they're having some voices and seeing things. Those typically stand out for our grant kids more than any of the other symptoms.
And we also look at some genetic risk factors of family members, in particular first-generation family members who may have experienced psychosis or experienced psychosis, and that way we're able to also include them and make sure those needs are met.
Yeah.
So when you find this exists, how do you handle people? And we say, well, how do you treat it? What do you do when you find out?
Yeah, there's actually a ton of stuff out there. And so I think it's giving a lot of people more hope, because here I am telling you your child may be at risk, which is completely different than your child will have this. But let's say I'm able to give you some information, like here's some more things to look out for. If you start noticing these, give me a call, because there's other interventions to put into place. So we have case management services. We have youth peer support, which is really exciting and new. So it's someone that is a youth that has lived with mental health as an adolescent.
Sharing
their stories, yeah.
And that is, again, kind of a priceless piece to somebody that might be experiencing some behavioral mental health issues, to be able to talk to somebody and say, hey, I know what that's like. I've been through that. These are some of the things that I did to help. And so they can be an advocate, a cheerleader for them, and they really do play a special role within their lives.
Yeah.
You think that children are more willing to listen to a peer or a slightly older parent or a older person?
Right.
Yeah, and we actually have that same exact support for families. So a family support provider, which I have found invaluable as a therapist, as well as on my team, is having someone to represent the family's perspective and remind me like why this might be difficult. Because sometimes as a professional we forget what it's like to live day to day with a child with mental health needs, and they can remind me, and they can give that parent a listening ear about what that's like, because it's hard and it's tiring. And so they're able to help support them through that process as well. It's very exciting.
And through the grant, we've been able to participate in some pretty cutting edge trainings that are particular to individuals with these types of diagnosis or prodromal symptoms, but such as, we have virtual reality, and neurofeedback is one of our newer training modalities, and we have biofeedback and some groups specific to these needs, and other treatments, again, evidence-based and research, so that we know and feel confident about the services we're providing.
So quite a variety. I mean, you have a lot of
Yes,
options.
we do have a lot of options. Yes, we have a service menu, and that's what it isn't just every family walks through the door and gets one type of treatment. It really is specific to where that child is, youth, adolescent, developmentally, and the family's needs, and where they're at and what they're ready for.
Well, I know earlier in the program you mentioned going as old as into the 20s. for treatment
Right,
and so
right.
forth. And we think about dealing with children, or a lot of times you think, well, they're 18, they're an adult, nothing's going to be done from now on. But that is a service that you work with.
It is up to age 25. I think more and more youth may stay in the home, a little longer. And then through the years, there seemed to have been a gap between services. It was like, you're too old for adolescent pediatric services, but you're too young for adult services. And so people were falling into the cracks during that time frame. And so, we've really been able to extend up that age period, and not just that, but also create programs that focus specifically on that age group to ensure that services and kind of meeting that continuity of care.
Do you find that if you have a child who's been going through the programs and they want to continue, they don't want to have to say, oh, you're too old, I can't do anything for you.
Right. Oh, your birthday's tomorrow, off to it, yeah. And so we do, and every child is different. Some, may turn 20 and say, I really want to be seen at an adult program. And we would say, okay, we will help coordinate that. And others that developmentally might look different, and so they're 23 and they're very much involved in the pediatric services that we provide. So,
tying them together. Now you mentioned a little bit hereditary. People might wonder, is the family, if there's a family history of having challenges, do the children sometimes fall into those as well?
So I think with all mental health, if your family members, if there's someone in your family that has a mental health issue, always should be on the lookout. I mean, it's just like any medical issue.
Got a bad heart, something much of.
Right.
So I think it's always important to just have an open discussion. and know what's going on in your family. I've learned more and more as I've gotten into this profession, things that are going on in my own family. I'm like, oh, I would have, who knew? Well, who for me?
Well, is that a big thing in society that people don't know, that they're still kind of keeping things quiet, you know? I mean, is that something you're seeing a change, or, you know,
What do you
how's
think?
society dealing with it?
I think it's an exciting time. I think there's still a lot to be worked on and a lot more openness to be had about having a mental health issue. I think it's becoming better over time. I think there's a lot more discussion. I think social media has played a huge role in that, and the internet having so much availability. I'm hoping that as we continue to grow, that we continue to talk and reach more and more peoples and more people and cultures, and make that more talked about and less stigmatizing, so people get help. It's really exciting. It's a passion. I love mental health. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah, just the more people, you know, come out and talk about their own challenges, and a lot of celebrities and football players and professional
Big name
athletes,
people they
right, talk about, you know what, I've dealt with these same struggles. These are what I've been able to do to get treatment, and I'm in a better place now. And it's okay to say, you know, I need help. And so that does kind of open the door, especially those youth that are really involved in social media, and to say, it's not just me, you know.
So social media can have a positive side as well.
It can, at times. At times, that social media, when we use it for good, yes, it can be.
Of course, then there's the negative side of social media, probably a lot of myths and falsehoods that go
For
around.
sure.
So you
For
have to
sure.
deal with those.
Right.
Tying that together. So locally, how are you working to try to get the word out beyond interview shows like this? You know, let people know you're here, and we're, you know, working together to help people.
Sure. I know for me, you know, being involved with the schools and just attending board meetings and talking out and being part of committees and groups, you know, helping to kind of say, these are how you access our services. Partnerships with local agencies, child serving agencies in particular, are really important.
So you get a lot of referrals. People will refer to you.
Yes, they do. On my level, I am trying to go out and more reach the families and youth. So my goal is to get more people in the community just aware and talking about mental health. So I just, here at Southern 2 weeks ago, I just did a youth mental health first aid class. So that was really exciting, because now I'm not just working with people who are professionals, I'm working with people who are going to become professionals, and they are all in all walks of life and different majors. And so if they run across these issues, they know what to do now. So they don't have to worry about it. They're like, I know how to ask the question, I know what to look for. And so that's kind of what I would like to see more of, is that more and more people get trained in youth mental health first aid, and networking groups and all of that sort of stuff.
So awareness being a big effort.
Awareness, absolutely.
And if they wanted to contact you, somebody who's watching the show, well, how do I get more information?
Sure.
This place called Will's Place.
Right. They can call 417-347-7580 is our main line there at Will's Place. We have clinics, several clinics out in various places within the community. So if that's a little bit of a drive to our main location in Joplin, which is at 1800 West 30th Street, we do have clinics in Carthage, Neosho, Pineville, all over.
In the region. But, you know,
In the region, yes.
Area, but they're not in Joplin. They
Right,
have opportunity to
right,
come in and
correct.
work together. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for being on the program today, sharing some information for our audience.
Yes.
And I also like to thank the viewers for joining us this week. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.